Jace had never seen anything like it. The vastness of the galactic market stretched beyond the horizon, its colors and sounds overwhelming. A mix of alien languages filled the air, with traders haggling over anything and everything. Rare minerals, exotic animals, and, as Jace had learned the hard way, slaves. It had all started weeks ago, when Jace's ship was ambushed by a band of space raiders. He had tried to fight back, but there were too many. His crew was gone, and he was dragged across the stars, eventually ending up here. In the heart of an alien slave market, humans, in the grand scheme of the galaxy, were not the most sought-after species. They were strong and resourceful, but there were other, more exotic creatures that commanded higher prices. Jace had been hoping for a quick sale, to get it over with, but what he didn't know was that he was about to become a pawn in something much bigger. The auctioneer, a hulking, multi-limbed alien, shouted as he introduced Jace to the crowd. Strong, capable, and human, he said, his voice dripping with a mix of mockery and curiosity. Humans were rare on this planet, and the gathered audience took notice. Jace stood tall, his expression defiant, but his heart pounded in his chest. He was a prisoner now, with no control over his fate. Jace's eyes scanned the crowd. Most of them were interested in creatures of power, those with special abilities or strange looks. But then, his eyes locked onto a figure standing at the back, someone who seemed different from the rest. She stood apart from the rest of the buyers, her regal posture and commanding presence drawing attention even from the most hardened traders. She was the queen of a distant planet, a feared and respected leader known as Queen Relara of the Veshka. Her species was infamous for their ruthlessness, known for conquering entire worlds with little mercy. Relara had never purchased a slave before, yet here she was, observing Jace with something akin to curiosity in her alien eyes. The auctioneer continued his pitch, but Relara raised a hand, signaling for him to stop. She stepped forward, her shimmering robes brushing against the cold floor. Her voice, when it came, was smooth, yet carried an undeniable authority. "I'll take him." The crowd fell silent. The auctioneer, taken aback, hesitated before confirming the deal. The price was high, far higher than anyone had expected for a human slave, but no one dared argue with the queen. Jace was handed over without a second thought. As she led him away from the market, Jace tried to hide the confusion and fear rising within him. What did she want with him? Slavery was one thing, but the queen, someone of her power, had no need for a mere human. And yet, here he was, her property now. Relara turned to him, her gaze softening for a brief moment, though her face remained unreadable. "You'll serve me well," she said simply, her voice echoing in the quiet of the spaceport. Jace didn't answer. What could he say? He was no longer in control of his fate. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Something about this alien queen intrigued him, something beyond mere ownership. Little did he know, this simple purchase would change the course of his life forever. Days turned into weeks, and Jace's life on Queen Relara's ship became more complicated. He had learned to follow her commands and assist her in various duties. Whether it was overseeing her meetings, guarding her during political discussions, or accompanying her on dangerous missions, Jace had become a trusted figure in the Queen's life. Yet, despite all his service, he couldn't shake the strange feeling that something deeper was growing between them. Relara was a powerful and intelligent ruler, yet Jace noticed moments where her guard would slip. Late at night, when the ship was quiet, he would sometimes hear her walking the halls alone, her thoughts clearly heavy. There were times when she would look out at the stars with a sadness that seemed to pierce through her strong, unshakable exterior. One evening, after a long and exhausting day of strategic meetings with her advisors, Relara called for Jace. As he entered her private quarters, she was standing by the window, looking out at the endless stretch of space. Her back was turned to him, her posture tense, as though something weighed heavily on her mind. "Jace," she spoke without turning. Her voice had a different tone tonight, softer, almost vulnerable. You've been with me for a long time now. You've seen the battles I've fought and the challenges I've faced, but you don't know the cost of my crown." Jace frowned. He wasn't sure what she meant. "You've had your share of battles. You're strong. You're a queen." Rhaenyra sighed deeply. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and sorrow. "I've built an empire, yes, but it's cost me more than I ever imagined. There are those who would see me fall. I've made enemies, and I've lost allies. I'm alone in a way no one can understand. I am the most powerful being in the galaxy, and yet, in my moments of solitude, I feel more empty than ever." Jace felt a pang of sympathy for her. He had seen her strength, her ability to command and control situations, but he had also seen the lonely nights where her mask would slip. She was a queen, but she was still human, maybe more human than she allowed herself to admit. "Why me?" Jace asked, his voice softer than usual. "Why did you choose me? You could have anyone you wanted." Rhaenyra's gaze softened, her eyes locking with his. She took a slow step forward, her expression unreadable. "I didn't choose you for your strength or your skills. I chose you because you are the only one who doesn't fear me. You see me for who I really am. Someone who is not just a ruler, but a woman who wants something more than just power. I need someone who can see past my crown, someone who can stand beside me without wanting to take my place." Jace felt a deep shift within him. For the first time, he understood. Rhaenyra wasn't just a queen. She was a person with desires, fears, and insecurities. She had spent so long protecting herself from the world, but now, in his presence, she was opening up, letting her walls down just a little. The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Jace stood still, looking into her eyes, trying to process everything she had said. He had never expected this kind of honesty from her, but there it was. Rhaenyra, the most powerful queen in the galaxy, wasn't invincible. She was vulnerable. "I don't know if I can be the person you need," Jace said quietly, "but I promise I will stand by you, no matter what." Rhaenyra's eyes softened, and for the first time, he saw a genuine smile tug at the corner of her lips. It wasn't a smile of power or manipulation, but one of relief. "Thank you, Jace," she whispered. "That means more to me than you could ever know." In that moment, Jace realized that his role in Rhaenyra's life had shifted. He wasn't just a slave anymore. He was her confidant, her protector, and perhaps, just perhaps, something more. Jace's new life began as he was escorted through the grand corridors of Queen Rhaenyra's ship. The interior was magnificent, far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The walls shimmered with strange, glowing symbols, and the air smelled faintly of exotic flowers. The Queen's ship, a massive vessel that seemed to hum with power, was a symbol of her wealth and influence. Rhaenyra walked in front of him, her long, flowing robes brushing against the polished floor. She moved with purpose, her every step commanding attention. Jace tried to keep up, but his mind raced with questions. Why had she bought him? What was her true intention? Most people in the galaxy would buy a slave for work, but there was something different about her. She was a queen, powerful, respected, and feared. She could have anyone or anything she wanted. Why a human? As they reached a large chamber, Rhaenyra turned to face him. The doors slid open silently, revealing a lavish room decorated with alien art and strange artifacts. It was obvious this place was meant for royalty. She gestured for Jace to stand near the center of the room. "You're here to serve me," Rhaenyra said, her voice calm and steady. "I expect loyalty and obedience. If you do well, you will have your freedom eventually." Jace stood still, unsure of what to say. "Freedom," he repeated, his voice a mix of disbelief and skepticism. What could he possibly do to earn his freedom? He was a slave. It didn't make sense. Rhaenyra's gaze softened for a moment, but her expression quickly returned to its usual cold composure. "Yes, you will serve me as a companion, a guard, A protector. I need someone strong, someone who can understand my commands and carry them out without question. There are many enemies who want to see my rule end. Jace felt a surge of curiosity. A queen who needed a protector, it didn't add up. But for now, he had no choice but to follow her orders. After all, he was trapped in her world now. Days turned into weeks, and Jace found himself serving Relara in ways he never imagined. She kept him close, often asking for his presence in meetings with her closest advisors, though she never shared much about her past or her plans. Relara had a keen mind, and though Jace didn't understand the intricacies of galactic politics, he could see how much respect she commanded. Every word she spoke held weight, and even her enemies seemed to hesitate when she was around. Still, there was something that bothered him. She was kind, even generous at times, but she kept him at a distance. The more time they spent together, the more Jace couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Relara than just a cold queen. He often caught her watching him in silence, her eyes filled with emotions she never voiced. One evening, as they stood overlooking the stars from the observation deck, Relara turned to him, her face unreadable. "Tell me, Jace," she said quietly, "do you believe in fate?" Jace frowned, not expecting such a question. "Fate? I don't know," he said honestly. "I think people make their own choices." Relara smiled, though it was a sad smile. "Perhaps, but sometimes fate makes its own choices too." Jace didn't understand what she meant, but something in her voice made him pause. There was a quiet sadness behind her words, something he hadn't seen before. For the first time, he wondered if Relara's need for a protector was more than just strategy. Could there be more to this than just slavery? As the stars outside glistened, Jace felt an undeniable shift in the air. Something was changing between them, something that neither of them could have predicted. As the days passed, the bond between Jace and Relara deepened. Their interactions, once formal and businesslike, now carried an underlying sense of camaraderie. Jace's loyalty to the Queen had never wavered, but now he found himself increasingly concerned for her well-being, both as a leader and as a person. The more he learned about her life, the more he realized that her position as Queen came with sacrifices he could never fully understand. It was late one evening when Relara called for Jace. The stars outside the window twinkled softly, casting a peaceful light over her chambers. Jace stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the familiar surroundings. Relara was seated at her desk, the soft glow of the console screen illuminating her face. She appeared lost in thought, her brow furrowed as she read through reports from her spies and allies. "Jace," she said, without looking up, her voice calm but heavy. "We have a problem. There's a growing rebellion among the Scyther system. They claim that I am an oppressive ruler, that I have abandoned the needs of my people. They are gaining support, and I'm afraid they may attack soon." Jace frowned. "What are you planning to do?" Relara finally looked up, her sharp eyes locking with his. "I'm going to put down the rebellion, of course. It's the only way to maintain control." But she hesitated, her gaze dropping for a moment, as if weighing something in her mind. "But?" Jace asked, sensing that there was more. Relara's voice softened. "But I can't do this alone. I need someone who can not only fight alongside me, but someone who understands the weight of my position. I've been surrounded by yes-men, Jace. No one challenges me. No one speaks the truth to me. I need someone who can balance the scales, someone I can trust completely. That's why I asked for you." Jace blinked, surprised by the gravity of her words. She needed him more than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just about his strength, his loyalty, or even his service. It was about his mind, his perspective. Relara wanted him to be a partner in the most crucial moment of her reign. "You want me to help lead the campaign against the rebellion?" he asked, trying to understand. Relara nodded, her eyes locked with his. "Yes, but not just as a soldier. I need you by my side as an equal. I want you to help me make the decisions, to advise me in matters of strategy and politics." Jace's heart raced. The proposition was unexpected, but it felt right. He had been with Relara through thick and thin, and he had proven his worth time and time again. This was a chance to help her, not as a slave, but as someone with a voice, someone with power. "I'll do it," Jace said firmly, his words resolute. "I'll help you, Relara. I'll stand by your side." A flicker of relief passed through Relara's expression. She stood from her chair, walking towards him with purpose. When she reached him, she placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch unexpectedly gentle. "You don't know what this means to me, Jace," she said softly. "I have spent so much of my life alone, surrounded by people who feared me or only wanted my power. But you're different. You see me for who I am, not just the queen." Jace looked into her eyes, feeling the weight of her words. For the first time, he saw something more than the powerful queen before him. He saw a woman who had sacrificed everything to build an empire, a woman who longed for connection and trust. "I'll never leave you, Relara. You have my word." She smiled, a rare and genuine smile, her eyes softening. "Thank you, Jace. Together, we can put an end to this rebellion. And maybe even more. We'll show the galaxy what we're truly capable of." And in that moment, Jace realized that he wasn't just standing by her side as a servant. He was becoming her partner in a way he had never expected. The line between them had blurred, and now they were both equals, united in their fight for the future of her empire, and perhaps something even deeper. The days leading up to the battle against the rebellion were filled with preparation. Jace and Relara worked tirelessly, going over battle plans, strategizing with Relara's commanders, and making difficult decisions. Despite the tension that filled the air, the bond between them grew stronger. Relara had come to trust Jace more than anyone else, and she relied on his advice. He was no longer just a slave. He was her partner, her closest confidant. He had become the person she turned to in moments of doubt, and he had proven time and again that he could see beyond the surface, offering insights she had never considered before. One evening, as the final preparations were being made, Relara invited Jace to her private chambers. The room was dimly lit, with the soft glow of the stars outside filtering through the large windows. Relara was sitting at her desk, reviewing a report from one of her spies. When Jace entered, she looked up at him with a mix of exhaustion and determination in her eyes. "Jace, I need to ask you something," she said, her voice unusually quiet. Jace, sensing the seriousness in her tone, stepped closer. "What is it?" Relara placed the report down and looked directly at him. "This rebellion, they are a threat to my reign, to everything I've worked for. But what if there's more to this than just a political struggle? What if someone else is behind it? Someone who wants to take my throne?" Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Jace thought for a moment. He had seen the signs of a power struggle among Relara's enemies, but he hadn't considered that someone might be manipulating the rebellion from the shadows. "Do you think someone's pulling the strings?" he asked, his voice low. Relara nodded slowly. "I don't trust anyone, not even my most loyal generals. Everyone has their own agenda, and I can't afford to be blind to that anymore." Jace understood the weight of her words. As the queen of an empire, Relara had enemies everywhere. She had been forced to make alliances with those who didn't care about her, but only about their own power. The trust she placed in others was thin, and that was a dangerous thing for a leader to have. "We'll figure this out, Relara," Jace said, his voice firm. "I won't let anyone take you down. I'll help you find who's behind this and make sure they're dealt with." Relara met his gaze, her expression softening. "I don't know what I would do without you, Jace. I've been alone for so long, and now I have someone I can truly rely on." Jace's heart raced. He had always seen Relara as a powerful queen, a ruler with unmatched strength. But now, in this moment, he saw the vulnerability that she hid from the world. She was more than just a leader. She was a woman who had sacrificed everything for her empire, who had lost her trust in people and in love. "You've never been alone, Relara," he said, taking a step closer. "Not anymore." She looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. For a moment, the world seemed to fall away. Jace could feel the tension in the air between them, a new understanding forming in the silence. But before either of them could speak again, an alarm blared, breaking the stillness. Relara's eyes widened, and she quickly turned toward the control panel in the corner of the room. "Trouble," she muttered under her breath, her fingers flying over the console. "The rebellion is on the move." Jace's hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side. "We're ready. We'll stop them." Relara stood, her face hardening with determination. "We'll stop them, together." And with that, the moment of unspoken words was gone. The battle was on, and both Relara and Jace knew that their lives, and the future of her empire, depended on the choices they made in the coming hours. The warning alarms had barely stopped blaring when the sound of boots echoed through the corridors. The rebellion had already begun its assault on Relara's stronghold, and chaos spread quickly. Jace stood by Relara's side, his hand tightly gripping his weapon, eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement. Relara, ever the queen, was calm, focused, and ready for battle. "We need to secure the command center," Relara said, her voice steady as she looked at Jace. "The rebellion will try to break through there first." Jace nodded without hesitation. They had been prepared for this moment, but nothing could fully prepare them for the onslaught that was about to come. The fate of the entire empire rested on their shoulders, and for the first time, Jace truly felt the weight of the responsibility that had been thrust upon Relara. They moved swiftly through the hallways, their footsteps muffled by the thick metal floors. The sounds of blaster fire echoed from nearby, signaling that the battle was already in full swing. Relara's guards, loyal and well-trained, were holding their ground, but it was clear the rebellion had the numbers and the firepower to overwhelm them if they didn't act quickly. As they reached the command center, Relara stopped and turned to Jace. Her eyes were filled with determination. "Stay close to me. We cannot afford to let the enemy breach this room." Jace nodded, and they stepped inside, the heavy doors closing behind them. The command center was a hub of activity, with technicians working frantically to keep the communication channels open and the defense systems online. But even here, the tension was palpable. They could hear the distant sounds of explosions and the clash of weapons as the battle raged outside. "Report," Relara barked, her authority undeniable. The technician in charge turned to her with a worried look on his face. "Queen Relara, the rebellion has breached the outer defenses. They're advancing through the lower levels, and they've already taken control of the East Wing. We're being pushed back." Relara's jaw tightened. "We can't allow them to reach the upper levels. We must hold them here at all costs." Jace stepped forward. "I'll go with a team and try to cut them off. We can flank them before they reach the command center." Relara's eyes softened as she looked at him. She didn't want to send him into danger, but she knew he was the only one she trusted. "Be careful." "I will," Jace said, giving her a small, reassuring smile before turning to the team of soldiers. He knew this mission would be risky, but there was no turning back. The future of the Empire depended on it. As Jace and his team made their way toward the lower levels, the sounds of battle grew louder. The rebellion had clearly planned their assault well, but Jace wasn't about to let them take the Empire without a fight. They reached the lower levels and immediately engaged the enemy, blaster fire lighting up the dark corridors. The battle was fierce, and Jace moved with precision, his training and instincts guiding him through the chaos. His team fought valiantly, but the rebels were relentless. It felt as if every step forward was met with a counterattack. Jace's heart raced as he moved through the maze of halls, each corner presenting a new challenge. But despite the danger, Jace kept his focus. He had come this far, and he couldn't fail now, not when Relara's life and the future of her empire depended on his success. Back in the command center, Raylara watched the situation unfold on the holographic map. Her mind raced with strategies, but she knew there was only one thing that could secure her victory: Jace. She couldn't afford to lose him now. The battle raged on, and Raylara's resolve grew stronger. She would fight for her empire, but most importantly, she would fight for the man who had changed everything for her. As Jace advanced, his heart pounding with every step, he knew that the real test had just begun. The rebellion had underestimated him, and they would soon regret it. The battle had taken everything from them. Jace stood in the midst of the ruined command center, sweat dripping down his brow. His uniform was torn, bloodied from the skirmishes with the rebellion. Around him, the sounds of victory were muffled by the weight of the cost it had come with. The once proud walls of Raylara's stronghold were scared, the flashes of distant explosions still lighting up the darkened sky outside. Raylara walked over to him, her face tired but resolute. The war was over. The rebellion had been crushed, their leaders taken prisoner. But the victory had come at a heavy price. Many lives had been lost, including some of her most loyal soldiers. "Jace," she said, her voice soft but filled with strength. "We did it." Jace turned to look at her, his blue eyes meeting her gaze. His heart was still racing. But now, there was only a profound silence. They had fought together through impossible odds, and now the empire was secure. But it felt bittersweet. "We did," he replied, his voice hoarse. "But it doesn't feel like a victory." Raylara understood. She had lost much in this war, too. Her empire had been on the brink of collapse, and her people had suffered. The rebellion may have been defeated, but the scars would take years to heal. Raylara had become queen through sheer force, but now, she realized, she didn't want to rule over ruins. She wanted to rebuild. "I don't want to rule a broken empire," Raylara said quietly, as if speaking her thoughts aloud. "I want to rebuild it, with you by my side." Jace took a step forward. His eyes softened as he reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers gently. "What do you mean?" His voice was barely above a whisper, as though the question itself held immense weight. Raylara turned to face him fully, her expression vulnerable. "I mean, I've always believed that strength was the key to ruling. But now, I see that strength is nothing without those we care for. The people of my empire, and you." Her gaze dropped to the ground before she lifted her eyes back to his. "I can't do this without you, Jace. Will you stay? Will you help me rebuild what was lost?" Jace's heart skipped a beat. He had never expected this, never imagined that a queen, especially one as formidable as Raylara, would seek him out in this way. But there was something in her eyes, something raw and honest, that struck him deeply. "I'm not sure I'm the right man for the job," Jace said slowly, but his words were filled with a calm certainty. "But I know one thing for sure. I'll stand by your side. Always." Raylara smiled softly, her eyes filled with gratitude. "That's all I need. Together, we'll rebuild. Together, we'll lead." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the weight that had been pressing on Jace's chest lifted. He realized that everything he had fought for, every sacrifice he had made, had led to this moment. He hadn't just saved an empire. He had saved the woman who had become his heart's anchor. The woman he had come to love, despite the impossibly vast differences between their worlds. With their hands intertwined, Jace and Raylara stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future of the empire was uncertain, but together they would face it with strength, unity, and hope.